Thank you very much, Gerald, and thank you all for coming together this morning. We were just presented with words from St. Paul, and the closing remark was in reference to being sent. And I'd like to pick up on that. I'd like to pick up the words of the Lord in which that theme is his parting words. And it's in Matthew 28, starting with verse 18. And Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always to the end of the age." And this is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
This text, of course, is familiar to all of us. It's the Great Commission. And I would like to suggest that this is the background text for understanding the new evangelization and for appreciating the purpose and the goal of the year of faith. There is an urgency which comes from the words of Jesus. There is a call there. And we are expected to respond and to take up the challenge of this Great Commission that's been presented to us by the Lord. And it's a desire to respond which hopefully brings us together this morning, to consider what that response to the call of the Lord and to the call of the Holy Father and to the needs of our time, which is to proclaim the gospel anew. And so this morning, I am pleased to share with you again some reflections on this important opportunity that's given to us. In fact, I'd like to suggest that for all of us, this is a last chance. It's a last chance, and it's a great opportunity. To do what? Well, perhaps to start all over again. To give our church a new beginning. I was asked not too long ago, what did I mean by the new evangelization? Because I use it a lot. And I said, well, my short definition is, it's a chance to pass on what we have received. And if we don't do it, then it won't get done. In the last months, we've had gatherings of people, of interested people. We've had regional representatives come together to form councils for the new evangelization. We've had meetings with laity of various kinds and in various forms. The most recent one was our successful gathering at St. Mary's University of the Transmission Weekend. People speak about it. I get comments about it. And what are we going to do to follow that up? Well, today I'm speaking with you, priests and pastors, deacons and lay people that are here who are essential for the life of our church to go on. And so, what has been the fruit, or what has been the outcome of these various gatherings and conversations? Particularly, we had one at Oak Island, I think it was in June, where we brought people together and we worked at all sorts of things. And it was out of all of this that we identified some priorities that are in keeping with new evangelization, but which will be implemented or at least initiated in the year of faith, but which are priorities that we've identified for ourselves. All of this comes from spending time together, from lots of effort, from bringing our resources, limited as they are, to bear on this particular task, and with a lot of prayer. And I'm asking now that if we're going to refound our church, then we are going to have to find more time, and we're going to have to find more resources and put in a lot of effort, and we're going to have to do a lot of praying, because that's not an easy job that's been given to us. So one of the things about the year of faith is to get hold of, remember the words, the deposit of faith. Deposit is a banking term also. You got to put something in order to get something out. If there's nothing left in the account, well, you're going to get yourself arrested if you pass off rubber checks. So we need to recover the deposit of faith and replenish perhaps the content of the deposit of faith. That has to do with receiving the gift and understanding the gift. And the other part of the year of faith is to zero in on the need for witnesses. Witnesses, people who are ready to speak about what they have seen and what they have heard and what they have experienced in the language that is their own. So the goal of the year of faith in the Archdiocese of Halifax-Yarmouth is to encourage and promote a lifelong process of discipleship that will find its source and its summit in the Eucharist. How do we pass on the faith? How do we pass on the Eucharist? How do we commit ourselves to becoming, and now I quote Benedict in his letter setting up the council for new evangelization and the year of faith. How do we become credible witnesses of people enlightened in mind and heart by the word of the Lord? Mind is the deposit. Heart is the conversion. Well, one of the things that we're proposing for ourselves is that we're not going to be able to do very much around new evangelization if we aren't agreed at least on some basics. And so we're calling these the building blocks for the new evangelization. How do we become credible witnesses? Is any one of the 77% that doesn't give a damn about church anymore, how are they going to be reached, and will they believe us? Well, the values that we need to be putting out there are the values that have been proposed by Scripture. It's part of the teaching of the church, but it's also, and this is the last piece here is important, it's also what becomes part of the experience of our faith communities, which have been graced with the charisms necessary to effectively propose Christ anew in our Western culture. Now, there's a lot of stuff in that statement. Because concretely, we have a whole lot of places that we call churches that aren't churches. We have situations where people have been depleted of everything that they possibly had, and they do not have anymore the charisms and the gifts and whatever it takes to effectively propose Christ anew in our Western culture. Our job is not to become curators of museums. Our job is to communicate the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so if we look to our communities that have been graced with the gifts necessary, what do we learn there? What can we glean from that and make it applicable to our whole community? So, one of those values is discipleship, which means Christ-centered formation. The Great Commission says, make disciples. I've already said something about that. We're not very good at that. I'm quoting you. We're not very good at that. But we can baptize thousands in one day. And if we still had a gun, we could motivate, again, a whole lot of thousands to come forward to be baptized. But we don't have the gun anymore. Thank God for that. So if we're going to make disciples, what does that mean? It means learning at the feet of Jesus and to learn from Him what message. To learn from the Lord what He came to teach us, that we are cared for, that we are loved, that we are wanted, that you and I are not random accidents of the Big Bang Theory. There is purpose and meaning in life. Disciples and discipleship is being formed in that perspective. And when that happens, one of the effects is that people want to share it. That's the witnessing. To be a witness is to speak of the truth of what you yourself have experienced. Now, how many of us can speak credibly, powerfully, and significantly about the resurrection? Not as a historical fact, it is. Not as a dogma of the church, it is. But can we speak of the resurrection as a personal, lived experience? We want people to believe in the resurrection of Christ. But we need to be able to speak about our own resurrection. That's the conversion part. That's the transformation from death to life. And when that has happened, you want to talk about it. That's witnessing. The third value is when we get together with people who are similarly minded, either because they believe in the same things or because we're all crazy together, we create a community. We have a unity of purpose. We have a unity of experience. And so the community of faith has to become something more. And I used in my pastoral letter these words: the church cannot be a collection of individual believers practicing their faith in private, satisfied with their self-sufficiency. To be the church is to be a living organism, a body alive with health and strength, where every part is necessary and where each part cooperates harmoniously with every other part, so that the body moves and lives with purpose and direction. When we witness to our faith and we come together, we create a bond that animates us all. And so there is then the need for support for our personal experience of faith. And so there's the personal encounter, which is so much at the heart of the new evangelization. But what is that? We need to experience personally the mystery of Jesus Christ, the incarnate reality of Christ. How do we touch Christ? And how does Christ touch us? That's through the sacraments. And it's the sacraments that need to be revitalized so that when we are forgiven, we are forgiven. When we are nurtured and fed, we feel full and complete. And when we give a blessing to a couple, that they will be examples of the kind of love that Christ has for his church, that they are ready to then love each other as Christ does. That's when the personal encounter becomes not just words, but an experience. And out of that, when it's done and lived and experienced, will come credibility, a value that, as I mentioned earlier, been lost. And so, in the new year of faith, we have an opportunity to put some of these values across. Will we be able to live out these values? It depends. I remember reading and someplace saying something like this: when a value ceases to be spoken of as a value, it no longer is a value. So a lot of these things we've ceased to speak about effectively. We need to speak again about the value of faith. So with those values that we've just talked about, and flowing from those values, we have a call to action, and we've zeroed in on 3 pastoral priorities for the year of faith. And so one of those is new evangelization of adults and their formation in the faith. The second one is catechesis, or I refer to it as the ministry of catechesis, as an opportunity and a challenge. And then the third one that we've zeroed in on is Christian marriage and family. Quickly, something about each one of those. New evangelization of adults. What do I mean by this? Well, in the Archdiocese of Halifax-Yarmouth, we are developing a vision of the gospel and a mission to propose Jesus Christ, directed towards the formation of long life disciples of mature adult faith. Behind that is a memory and an experience of being in Rome, the year 2000, World Youth Day, 1 million and over young people, and John Paul, in the middle of the night, says to everybody, don't be afraid. Grow up. Become mature adults in the faith. Now, all of us in our parishes, lots of energy goes into catechesis, and it has to be worried about the children. But you all know, as I know, that the real issue is not the children. The real issue is adults, and how do we deal with those adults, and what do we do to get those adults to take their faith seriously? And so, at the heart of this coming year, we would like to put the first priority on the adults. And hopefully in our areas, in our regions, in our parishes, we will do what we can to make adult faith not just a concept, but a reality. One of the things about this is that we go at it with small groups. Now, this is not new. You know that. And there are other groups in our church that have been functioning for many years, like, Knights of Columbus, Pastoral Council, CWL, RCIA, Crucio, Family Life Groups, and so on. They all have their modus operandi. Could we try to shift their way of doing and their way of being just a little bit, so that in each one of those regular gatherings they would be able to introduce something of faith sharing amongst themselves in an effective manner that would involve some of those values that I've just enumerated? That would be a beginning to create some momentum around adult faith. So adult evangelization and faith transmission is the primary catechetical challenge implicit in the new evangelization, and so it has to be our first priority. So in each region and parish, can we do something for adult catechesis so that it becomes part of the pastoral mission? How do we do that? Well, I think we have to do it with creativity and with patience, with a lot of pastoral solitude, and this last piece, by focusing on the persons that we encounter as persons, not as problems. The second priority, which is really the largest chunk of our effort, is the ministry of catechesis. And I say it's an opportunity and a challenge. But central to all of this is a shifting in our understanding around the ministry of catechesis. At the Synod, hopefully it will happen. One of the points that the bishops are going to be asked to reflect on is the possibility of instituting catechesis as a formal ministry of the church. If that were to happen, it would take it out of the realm of who can I grab at the end of Mass to be this year's DRE. It would mean that we would have to look for and find people who would become qualified to be ministers of catechetics. Well, do we have to wait for the Synod to make it an official installed ministry? Or can we not begin to develop our mindsets and begin to work towards an understanding of catechesis, which is not just the job that you give to a handful of people? Catechesis, one of the primary pieces, is for all of our churches and all of our communities of faith to begin to see themselves as the catechetical context, as the environment, the living environment in which faith grows. Right now, that's not what's happening. And so the ministry of catechesis is a major shift required of us all. And the transmission of faith depends on how we understand this catechetical role. It's not a job for specialists, but we do need trained people. And in the year of faith, we're hoping to do some things that will maybe move us along. We're calling those 3 initiatives. One of those initiatives is to form catechetical leaders as agents of evangelization. And we're going to bring together people. We're going to see this later on throughout the year. There will be offering sessions and formation programs and so forth in order to help the people that we have, but not just the people that we have, to become agents of evangelization. I needed, and I still need, to discover what it means for me as bishop to be the chief catechist in this archdiocese. Part of that I'm trying to do, and maybe I'm doing it badly in all of my long sermons, but I'm trying to do it. you need to see your roles as priests and deacons in a different light. It's not something that you can pass off to somebody else to do. You've got to be there as well. And I'm not suggesting that you're not, but I'm thinking of the shifting from a school model to a community-based experiential model. That's at the heart of the formation for catechetical leaders, and we're going to do some of that. Another thing that we need to do is to develop an understanding and an appreciation amongst all of us of the way of the catechumenate. That is not a commonly known, lived reality for us. Oh, many of us know what RCIA is, but RCIA says it's the rite of Christian initiation of adults. It's a rite. I'm not interested in the ritual. I'm interested in the journey. The ritual is what happens at the end of the journey. And so how do we discover the way of the catechumenate? And what does that mean for us all? And what are the experiential moments on that way that makes the reality of God, the reality of Jesus Christ, something that one receives and deepens and commits to? The catechumenate is something that we need to think about and study. And one of the things about the catechumenate is that it's not in a hurry. When you're on a journey, you walk at the speed that you are able to walk. Last week I couldn't walk at all because I had sore knees and sore feet. And so I couldn't walk, and I didn't. The catechumenate, as the journey towards baptism or commitment to Christ, needs to follow the rhythm of the person and not be in a hurry. And that means in practice that if we take this seriously, you don't baptize people because they've been through 2 meetings or they've met with somebody, or because this is the 3rd Sunday of the month and that's when we do baptisms. You don't confirm because you happen to be 12 or you happen to be in grade 2 or you happen to be in whatever the hell grade you happen to be in. Third initiative for catechists is that we want to do something for adolescents and for youth that's a little bit more effective. I've been here 5 years. And I've attended every one of the Steubenville conferences. And in my 43 years of priesthood, that weekend has been the most effective weekend to reach adolescents that I've experienced. Now, we've learned a lot from that. We got whatever it was, 600, 700 kids this year. We could get a hell of a lot more than that if we rallied and did something in each one of our parishes or in each one of our regions. And so one of the things that we're hoping to do in the coming year is to create in our parishes discipleship groups so that young people know more about Jesus. We want to have regional outreaches for young people. Why? Because we've got small communities and there's only 2 kids. There's not a whole lot of momentum that happens. And to bring them on retreat so that they can discover a little bit more about what the Lord is. And then reinforce it all by some kind of large diocesan gathering like we've done in Antigonish. We can do one here locally. It doesn't matter where. And the reason for that is the same reason we need community, so that we all discover that we're not alone. The third priority. So, we have 3 priorities. The second one is catechesis with 3 initiatives. And the third one is marriage and family life. And that's a key to the new evangelization. So what are we hoping for? Well, through our initiatives in catechesis and evangelization, our hope is to strengthen the faith of families by providing opportunities and creating conditions for faith to grow. We've been asked, the Church in Canada, to do something concrete about this during the coming year by zeroing in on marriage and family life. Now, this priority, I'm sure you all agree, is a priority that needs great attention. We cannot let what's been happening continue to happen. Marriage has been under attack. We don't know what it means anymore. The real challenge here is not about whether everyone is following the rules of the church. The real challenge here is, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? And what does it mean to relate to one another? It's an anthropological issue. Now, we don't often speak about anthropology in our homilies. But maybe we need to find opportunities for young men to come together so that they can discuss what it means to be a man, or for women to come together and talk about what it means to be a woman. And maybe we can discuss amongst ourselves how we relate adequately and properly with each other. And we don't have a hell of a lot to say on that. And we're the very first ones who have made grave mistakes, even in our own lives, with regards to those kinds of relationships. So it's not about a marriage program. It's about doing the fundamentals. The marriage program, the proximate preparation, sure, we'll do what we have to do for that. But more than that, we need to do some of the things that we just said around marriage. What marriage in human language is, in human terms, in the natural order of things. And let's remember that marriage, Christian marriage, as a sacrament, builds on that nature. If the natural is screwed up, what makes you think the sacramental will hold up? So we need some serious thinking about that. And I've said this perhaps in different ways at different times, and along with all of this, we need to take a look again at all those people who, for whatever reasons, have not succeeded in their marriage engagements and commitments. We need to be able to have some kind of healing, some kind of good news, some kind of message that speaks to the hearts of all of those people. They are brothers and sisters of the Lord like you and I, and they need the grace that comes from being loved by God. How do we do that? So that we don't get the Orthodox police after us. But we need to do it so that it touches people and so that they can know again that they are loved by God. And the consequence of being loved by God is that many will adjust their lives and will bring them into harmony. And with time and effort, we can come to a better place. So there's much to be done, and we'll do what we can. And we'll be counting on you to help us with this.